Hey, I'm Audra Yankton, empowerment and intuition coach, and this is Unveil You, the podcast where spirituality meets practicality to help you step fully into your power. Each episode, we'll talk about what it really means to align with your higher self, trust your inner knowing, and walk through life with grounded, soul-led confidence. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the Unveil You Podcast. I am your host, Audra, and today I want to talk a little bit more about alignment and some of the things that come along with that. So in our most recent episode, I had my friend Jordan on, and we talked a little bit about spiritual awakenings and a real life thing her and I went through with that car accident. Something that was kind of pushing us towards alignment, because once you have your spiritual awakening, you will then kind of, make this migration towards your soul's path and purpose, which is referred to as living in alignment when you come to this planet. So, I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that come along with that. So I guess if I had to label this episode something, it'd be kind of why being misunderstood is part of alignment. Because lately I've been thinking a lot about just identity shifts in general and what happens when you intentionally start calling in a new level of your life. So, maybe you've been doing the corporate thing forever and all of a sudden you're like, this just seems to be flat. I'm not really getting anywhere. I am ready to move on with my life or do something different. So you might start to make goals or think about entrepreneurship or, serving society at a greater level, things like that. So that's what I'm talking about when I say calling in a new level of your life, maybe your next level abundance or whatever it is for you. Because honestly, over the past year, my life has changed a lot ever since I launched this podcast. Things were kind of changing before that within me, but it's just been like a snowball effect. Things are changing more and more and more all the time, and maybe not externally in a way that people can observe, but I have a feeling that's about to click in sooner than later. It's been a lot of internal work because you have to internally change a lot before, sometimes these external things can arrive, because you have to match what you're calling in internally before things can externally show up and support you in that way. So again, last year, my life has changed a lot. And to be honest with you, a lot of those changes in the physical have been just in the last 3 months. So for those of you that don't know, I am very heavily pregnant. I am 34 or so weeks along at the time of this recording, and I'm sure I'll have a baby in the next month, which is really, really exciting. We're having our second girl, and it's going to complete our family. And I just absolutely can't wait. But with that comes a lot of, there's a lot of creation energy behind that. It's very draining. And anyway, I kind of had in my head at my last place of employment, before I just got a new job. I'll talk about that in just a second. But I had in my head, okay, maybe I feel like I've outgrown my last role a little bit. And, things were seemingly stable. It's no one's going to quit a job just before they have a baby, right? You want to have some stable maternity leave, things or benefits that you have earned. I mean, we don't just take a job for the money. There's benefits that come with that too. So I was basically I got to get through having this baby and then having some maternity leave and then maybe reevaluate where I'm at, because I was starting to feel this stagnant energy of where I was at. And lo and behold, at the end of February, when I was about 5 months pregnant, I got laid off again. Yes. You all know this about me. I've been laid off a few times before, or actually just twice before. This was the third layoff I've been through in my career. And they, it's it's never something maybe the first time it happened to me, I was very ashamed of it. I didn't have an understanding of why layoffs happen. And now, I've worked in corporate America for a while now. I'm oh, these things just happen. You get caught in the crossfires. I'm very specialized in what I do in research. And it's just kind of if companies go a different direction, and I very firmly do research, and I'm not the kind of employee that maybe wants to shift around to whatever different type of job is available. Sometimes it's hey, we're not even going to keep this department anymore. So boom, we can't keep you. So anyway, I have been laid off with a 9-month-old infant before, and that was one thing, and that was really scary. And this time I was laid off while 5 months pregnant. So that was pretty crazy. But so I've been navigating these massive internal and external transitions like all at the same time. And so I just have to say, though, that like this time being laid off pregnant, I just I really just felt like, I kind of had my day or two where I licked my wounds like, man, this sucks. Like now I have like this super crazy expensive Cobra and, like coverage for health insurance. Like I have to have health insurance. I have a pre-existing condition, being pregnant, and a lot of like insurance companies, like either if they will insure you, they don't like give you a very great rate because, you're pregnant. Plus it's like a family plan. I got my whole family I have to insure. So anyway, it was just like seemingly could have been the worst situation of my life to date. But weirdly, after I kind of got over the whole like, oh no, what am I going to do next? Like I just trusted the process. And I was like, Spirit wouldn't do this to me if it wasn't like aligning me towards something better. And even if the next thing that happens isn't like exactly where I want to be or whatever that is, I know sometimes there's just a transition period. So, I applied to a new job, like literally the day after this happened. And but I was just kind of open to whatever possibility. And you know what? I got it. It's back at a former company I was at, not one I was laid off from, but, one that I actually like am so grateful because like being pregnant, as pregnant as I am, it would be really challenging in a lot of ways to start at a brand new company. And a lot of new companies, I mean, let's be honest, they can't legally say this, but nobody would normally hire like somebody that's pregnant that they don't have any rapport with, all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot. I just had to, again, trust the process. Like, well, okay, worst case scenario. I mean, we've got some savings. We'll probably get through this, but I got to figure something out. Either, my research consulting needs to take off right now or something else is going to come in and hold me. And, at this old company, it was like the perfect position at the perfect time. I'm so grateful to them. If anybody there that is working with me now is listening to this, just know how so grateful I am to have landed where I'm at. And I get like even better maternity leave than I was going to get at my last company. And there's just like so much good coming from this. So I promise you, no matter what season you're in, if you can just like trust the process and know that like if something's happening outside of your control, don't let that get you down. Like just choose to see the good in it and choose to see like the universe just trying to reorient you to something better as it's like incrementally getting you towards your higher alignment, your higher path and purpose that you're trying to call in. And it will happen for you. I'm a living testament to that. Like I'm like a cat. I joke. I always land on my feet somehow through all of this. So anyway, all good here, but just kind of wanted to share that story up front of like, I've been kind of going through a lot, you guys. Like it's been a really crazy last few months. So anyway, kind of getting back to like the purpose of this episode, through all of this, I've been very intentional about the kind of life that I want to create, moving forward. And I have been for about the last year, but I had to like kind of get through some limiting beliefs and do some mindset shifting. But I've been trying to call in like more alignment, more freedom, more authenticity. That's been huge for me, is just being more my authentic self, not the version of me that people think I should be or the one that I think they think I should be, but just truly authentic me. I've been calling in more peace and more purpose. And interestingly, as I've been doing that, a lot of the old structures in my life have started falling away or rearranging themselves, like I just explained. And some are intentional, where I'm cutting it off and moving forward, and some of it not intentionally at all. Like, again, why in the world would I want to be laid off while I'm pregnant? Especially when, like, my husband's a stay-at-home dad and I'm the breadwinner, so that was, like, not something I would have wanted. But, I trusted the process and things worked out better for me. And I think that's something people don't talk about enough is when it comes to growth or manifestation or alignment in general, is that when you genuinely, from a soul-centered place, start calling in this new version of your life, the old version often has to go through this destabilization process first. So you've got these old identities, these old coping mechanisms, old relationship dynamics, old ways of relating to yourself, And sometimes from the outside, these periods can look really messy or confusing. Like, again, I feel like I had so many people reaching out to me through this layoff process, like genuinely feeling bad for me, which is kind of like makes me cringe because I'm like, I'm sure this looks really bad, but trust me, I'm fine. And I'm not just saying that, like, I really am fine. I'm very trusting of like things are going to work out. But yeah, to the outside looking in, sometimes it just looks really bad. So, some people like would call it luck too, like what happened to me. Like finding a new job so quickly and having it work out and just, wow, I can't believe it. And then they're going to give you, maternity leave because it's like, I'd worked there like 2.5 or 3 years beforehand or something like that. But even if that hadn't happened, they were still going to give me maternity leave, which is amazing. Like, wow, what a forward, like, wonderful company to just like take moms so seriously like that, especially in this economy when I know a lot of companies are cutting benefits and they have this amazing benefit for mothers. Like, couldn't be more grateful. So anyway, some people would call my situation luck, and that's, I suppose, one way to look at it. But to me, it feels much more like life reorganizing itself in response to the direction I've been intentionally moving toward internally. So it's, again, not necessarily the exact form I expected, but it's in a form that supports where I'm going. And I can think of one of the hardest parts of these I think one of the hardest parts of these transitions is that when you change internally, your relationship dynamics more than likely are going to change too, especially if you've been not an authentic version of yourself with some of the people around you. So people still relate to older versions of you when you're actively outgrowing them. So in this episode, I want to talk about why humans evolve spiritually and emotionally, why identity shifts can feel uncomfortable, why fear of judgment can keep people stuck. That's a big theme for me. Why being misunderstood is sometimes part of your higher alignment, and how to evolve without becoming reactive, bitter, or feeling like you need to burn bridges with everyone from your past. Because I don't think alignment is about becoming superior to other people or people that you don't view as spiritually evolved as you. It's about becoming more honest, and honesty is what changes things. So honestly, I think that this conversation is becoming more relevant for a lot more people right now because there's just so much change happening in the collective, like in the world, in people's personal lives, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. A lot of people on the planet are waking up right now in different ways. We can see it everywhere. It's almost like I wake up and, like, if you see a news story, you're like, I just don't even know what's real anymore. It's really crazy, but you see a lot of people that are starting to question old identities, question old paths, and we're starting to question structures that we were all born into that have been going on for over 100 years and we just didn't say anything about. And all of a sudden we're like, hey, like, what's going on here? Why? Just the questioning in itself is part of the greater awakening. And people are realizing that they've been performing versions of themselves that no longer fully fit, and are feeling internal shifts that they can't completely explain yet. So when that starts happening, it can feel really disorienting at first, especially when your inner world starts changing before your external life fully catches up. So like I said, I spent the last year of my life calling this next level me, like this aligned version of me, this like free version of myself that only depends on me and is fully happy and abundant, all these different types of beautiful things I've been wanting to kind of call into my life. And none of that like really looked any different on the outside, but like once my inside finally matched that frequency and that I mean what I can only assume, like finally I'm at a place where my frequency is kind of lifted high enough to be able to support the kinds of things I was calling in. And that's when your life will kind of start to seemingly crumble because, you have to kind of like level stuff sometimes to rebuild again. So, and I think I talked about this a long time ago in an interview with Jessica Rachel, was that sometimes the rock bottom is an exciting time if you choose to see it that way, because it means that things are just building in your favor now because there's kind of a clean slate to work from. So anyone that's kind of going through that right now where they feel like they're at this rock bottom, how can things get worse for me? Shift your mindset to think, wow, that means something really big and really awesome is coming my way. And I'm still watching things unfold for me, but I have full faith that it's all going to work out and it's all going to be great. So if you've been feeling that lately, this episode's really meant to help explain some of the deeper dynamics that can happen during those periods of transformation and identity change. So why do humans change spiritually is kind of the first thing I want to talk about. And I think humans are designed to evolve. It's not just what I think, it's like a lot of people understand this to be true. We're here to evolve. We evolved, from in a physical sense from like monkeys, some people believe. A lot of people, I think, believe that. And also spiritually, I think we are also here to evolve as well. Things are just a lot different now. We've gone from survival mode as a society to like in our heads, like you've noticed a lot of people starting to talk about mental health and having these kind of existential thoughts and things like that. So it's a spiritual evolvement or evolution of society. So and spiritually, growth is not just about achieving things externally. It's also about becoming more honest and more aligned with your actual nature instead of conditioning or survival patterns. And a lot of people, a lot of personal growth is really just remembering who you are underneath performance and fear and social conditioning and underneath the roles you adopted for safety or acceptance. And when I say remembering, it's like sometimes like we don't even know who we are without these like identities that were pushed upon us. So we'll call it a remembering on like your higher self knows who you are. If you get in touch with that version of yourself on the other side, your higher self. We've talked about what that is on this podcast before. If you're unfamiliar, you can just Google that. It's a pretty simple concept. It's this higher version of you without ego. They know what you came here to do, and you just have to get back in touch with that and be like, okay, who am I when I take away all of the social conditioning and fear? And people often think awakening or alignment means just adding things, but really, a lot of the time, and this is my experience, it really feels like subtraction in a way. So you're shedding things like false identities, coping mechanisms, dependence on external validation, and roles that no longer fit you anymore. And some identities are necessary for certain seasons. Like I've been able to look at my past self, and even though she was trapped in some of these people-pleasing behaviors or identity crises, like I didn't know, what am I without this certain identity that I don't even know if I built myself. Like I realized she had to carry me through certain seasons to get me where I am today. And I'm very grateful for that. Even though that's not who I am anymore, I'm still very grateful for the version of me that had to do that. So it's not about seeing yourself as like, oh, I was awful then or whatever. It's like, no, you got to be grateful for yourself for carrying you through everything you needed to carry yourself through before. But it's about evolution, right? So it's like you're just evolving to the next version of yourself for a new season, a better season. If you're on the spiritual journey, the next season will, I believe it to always be better than the next. So you have that to look forward to. But eventually what protected you can start to limit you. As we're talking about, you got to evolve. So sometimes discomfort is not punishment. Sometimes it's just your soul recognizing, I can't fully stay in this version of myself anymore. And growth usually happens internally. I mentioned this earlier. Internally, you'll grow before your external life will change, because you have to be able to support the external changes that are coming, or they'll just kind of drop in and go right back out if you're not energetically a match for it. So this can create some confusing transition periods, and you can feel yourself changing before you can fully explain what is changing. And I think this is where identity work starts becoming really uncomfortable, because many of the identities we carry are not random. They were adaptive for things that we either chose or did not choose to go through. So we've had to adapt to, maybe to a less aligned version of ourselves to just get through something. So identity shifts can be uncomfortable. Many identities form around safety, belonging, approval, emotional connection, or predictability. So sometimes what we call personality is actually just an adaptation. What do I mean by that? I have a few examples for you. And either you'll see yourself or someone else in probably each of these examples. But this would be something like becoming the easygoing person, because maybe you grew up in a family with a lot of conflict and you felt unsafe around that. So you just became easygoing because that felt safe for you. Or becoming the achiever because productivity became tied to worth. That is huge for me. I was a high achiever. Like, I even think of like my high school years of straight A student, valedictorian, that kind of thing. That was huge for me, but I think that I had worthiness tied around that. Like, if I didn't achieve those metrics that, and was super productive in that way, I was not worthy of anything. I felt worthless without that. So I became a high achiever. And once I can make that distinction now, it's like, oh, okay, what actually matters to me? Not these like human-made metrics, but what actually matters to me. Another example is becoming hyper-independent because relying on people once felt disappointing to you. I know I can feel that way with like some friendships sometimes. Throughout my past is like I haven't always had a large friend group because people disappoint you. You know, sometimes they don't really match what I put into it, and that was disappointing. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe I don't need friends. So I've gone through a lot of seasons where I was a little more lonely than others because of that. Or another example is becoming emotionally guarded because vulnerability once felt unsafe. Or becoming the constantly available friend because being needed created security. Maybe you either have a friend like that and you need to think about that, or you are that friend. So sometimes these identities genuinely helped you survive difficult seasons, which is why releasing them can feel emotional to you. You're very attached to these identities, even if you aren't aware how they came about. So even positive growth can create grief. So there's always dark with light. That's kind of why I felt like this episode was important to do, because it's like spiritual growth is not always just sunshine and rainbows and butterflies. Like, I mean, we talked about that in the last episode with the spiritual awakening stuff. Like, I went through a near-death experience, and now it's like, wow, I hadn't had that trigger event to like bring me to this other side of like a beautiful spiritual awakening and like going through my spiritual growth process. Like, I don't even want to think what I would be like right now. Like, I'm so grateful for it, but it comes with some bad, not so fun things to go through sometimes. It's like peaks and valleys, right? So as you're, evolving spiritually, there's this in-between phase oftentimes where the old version of you doesn't fit. And also I'm like kind of going through something like this right now. I'm feeling like more on the other side of it than in the middle of it, but just so you know, like, this is actually a lived experience of mine and not just something I found combing through Reddit threads and things of that nature. So you kind of will, like, as you're shifting, and this is fun, it's like you're seeing that, oh, okay, I'm not the same person anymore. But there's this old version of you that you kind of look back and you're like, yeah, that doesn't really fit who I am anymore. The new version of you has not fully embodied yet. You're not quite there where it's like you're living this new next level great life. And your external reality hasn't caught up yet. So it's like nothing fits anymore. It's like much like being pregnant. One day you're like, then your third trimester, and you're like, I used to get away with wearing some of my old clothes and they kind of fit. And now it's like I'm fully in maternity stuff and I'm literally wearing a men's sweater right now. So it's kind of like that in-between version, or that in-between of like, okay, I haven't had the baby yet and I don't look like myself at all right now. So it's just kind of metaphorically, it's like being heavily pregnant. And this phase, in a spiritual sense, like, or mentally, it can feel kind of lonely, especially when the people around you still are expecting this old version of you and you just aren't that person anymore and you don't really feel like faking it. So internally, you might feel more authentic and calmer and more self-aware, but externally, people can interpret the change as like distance or rejection because the familiar dynamic is starting to shift. So maybe you've noticed this behavior in other people and you can look back with a little bit more grace of like, oh, I can kind of see what they're going through. Or maybe you're going through this right now, or you have, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what that was. It's like tension out of nowhere and people just being confused and maybe not clicking with you anymore. And sometimes it's because you're becoming your next level better self. And it's just like hard for some people. Some people really don't like change. They want people to stay consistent. So when you're not staying consistent, it kind of disrupts their plans, right? So that's part of it. I think this is where the fear of judgment starts becoming a huge factor as well, because once you begin changing, you also become more visible. So I think many people are actually less afraid of failure than they are of judgment. Maybe I'm just like overgeneralizing because that's my lived experience, but I was like afraid of failing. I would say that was kind of what I felt was the root, but really the root was I was afraid of judgment of failing. So how people would perceive me if I failed, or even judgment of myself. So there's this fear of disappointing people or being perceived differently or seeming unrealistic. Maybe your goals are pretty out there and you're afraid people aren't going to like think that you can do that. And you kind of start to like get down on yourself about it. So you might fear being misunderstood or losing approval from your loved ones and friends. And no longer fitting expectations. So a lot of people unconsciously will organize their lives around avoiding judgment. Rather than just doing things they want to do, they literally will organize their lives to not be judged. And they like live this quiet life so that no one's judging them. Especially if approval in either your family or externally somehow became tied to love or validation or safety or stability. And authenticity can feel threatening to the nervous system because authenticity will more often than not increase your visibility. So it makes you more seen. If you're living a more authentic version of yourself, maybe you're not as mainstream as you used to be. And people might, you might be afraid, is people are going to look at me weird if I start dressing the way I want to or whatever. And it's like, why? Like, first of all, why do you care about that? Really look inward. And like, it's because there's part of your soul that's maybe like, yeah, I've just been conforming for all this time, but really I just want to be who I am. So that's what I mean by like living your more, like a physical example anyway, of like even just dressing differently to just match what you're into and what your interests are and what your authentic self likes. It makes you more seen in that way. And it might differ a lot from the norm. So here's some more examples then would be wanting to start a business, but worrying people will think you're unrealistic. Like maybe you want to, I don't know, make soap. Have like some kind of like goat milk soap business or something random, I don't know. And you're like, yeah, it's going to be a 7-figure business. And like, rather than just buying into that and like you're sitting there worrying that people will think you're unrealistic. It's like, and I'm here to tell you, you can do literally anything you want to do. It's just if you don't believe in yourself, no one's going to. So if you're worried other people are going to think you're unrealistic, that can definitely affect your success. Another example would be becoming more spiritual and worrying that people will think you've changed too much. I know I heard some feedback recently that, like somebody liked my podcast from my hometown, but they were like, it's a little out there though, which I think a year ago would have been like the worst thing I could have heard. Like, oh my God, someone thinks I'm out there. I'm just like used to blending in the background. That's what I want to be. But I actually found it a little humorous now. I'm like, oh, okay, well, hopefully it's tickling something in their soul. And they're like, yeah, maybe there's something a little bit more beyond how I've been living my life. So, that's something I struggled with early on in this business, as it is pretty spiritual based. And with this podcast, we talk about some really strange concepts if they're things you've never heard of before. But I think that's part of why I'm here, is to just help make these topics a little bit more approachable for people, so that we all can become our highest, best self on this planet. So anyway, I think that was a fear of mine, was thinking that, people will think I'm weird, or that I've changed a lot, or, whatever. Another example would be setting boundaries and then suddenly being called distant. So maybe your family is like overreaching in your business all the time, and, you kind of set up a screen between you and them, and you don't tell them everything all the time because you don't want them in your business, and they think you're distant and they're like mad at you for it. And it's just you setting a boundary and not letting them bully you for it. Another would be posting more authentically online after years of hiding parts of yourself. Or maybe you are becoming more confident and realizing that some people, maybe you had friendships that were with people that preferred you as insecure and someone they could step on before. And you didn't really realize that until you became a more confident version of yourself. So sometimes, again, aligning with your more authentic self is going to ruffle some feathers because it's like not... if someone is friends with you, or your family's comfortable with you because you've been presenting a version of yourself that feels more palatable to them, that can be a problem. So a lot of people are willing to stay unhappy longer than they are willing to risk being judged. And alignment is not the absence of judgment. Alignment is becoming less controlled by the fear of judgment. So you have to like make this conscious shift into I can survive people misunderstanding me, and like kind of being like accepting that you might have to like find your new soul tribe. But I guarantee you most of us are not going to have to burn it all down relationship wise. It's just relationships will have to evolve. Some of them do go away, but that's just part of it. Some people never fully become themselves because they stay loyal to identities built around this external approval, and the fear of judgment keeps people performing identities long after their soul has outgrown them. And then once that starts shifting internally, as I just mentioned, relationship dynamics will start shifting too. So why do people react when you change? People subconsciously create expectations around who we are, and then they relate to patterns and familiarity. So examples of this would be, oh, you're the reliable one, or you're the agreeable one, or you're the one who always says yes, or you're the ambitious one. And then when you change, it disrupts those expectations that they have, either consciously or subconsciously. And then sometimes people react before they consciously understand why. And it's not always malicious. It's just the discomfort with the change. So sometimes your growth reflects possibilities they are not ready to confront in themselves. I have seen this a lot. It seems like the more I change, the more people that are kind of stuck in their ways sometimes, I feel like they don't it's almost like they want to change, but they're just so I don't like this. I don't want to change, or like they don't think they can. So then they get like mad about stuff. So it's almost like sometimes when you're that beacon of light for them, that example, it's like it kind of really makes them mad when you would think it'd be the opposite. Like, oh, good for you. You're a good example of this, of what I'm trying to become. And really sometimes it's it just kind of like puts in their face the thing they're not willing to do, and it can make them upset. So so it just don't have any expectations here. Things unfold really strangely in some situations for people. But some examples here: people joking about your growth to minimize it. I've been through that. People go, oh, you're so evolved now, huh? And it's like, and that's not a reflection of how I feel. It's like, if I'm just talking my authentic truth and that's how you feel about it, I mean, maybe look inward at yourself. Why do you have such a problem with somebody living authentically, right? Or people acting uncomfortable when you stop with like self-deprecating humor or something like that. Like, oh, I don't talk that way about myself anymore. And they're just, oh, well, you think you're better than us? Like that kind of thing. Or friends reacting differently once you stop constantly needing reassurance, or family members resisting your new boundaries. I see this for a lot of people who kind of go down their spiritual evolution, is that they set new boundaries and family members get really upset about it. The first few Christmases might be a little difficult as your new, better self, just because of these kinds of things, just for an example. But, eventually people do. I mean, your family's your family for life, so they'll get over it. It's okay. Or even coworkers, if you worked at the same place for a while, coworkers reacting differently when you stop emotionally overperforming, or you're just like, yep, I'm just here to be who I am and do my job, and I'm not going to do much extra. It's like, oh, your coworkers might, oh, that's interesting. What's going on there? So people, again, I kind of hinted at this through the examples, but they might interpret self-trust as arrogance, even though it's like not at all what you're going for. That could be how it's seen. That shouldn't stop you from living in your alignment, but people can see it that way. They might see it as distance or selfishness or even rebellion sometimes, especially if you stop over-explaining yourself. You just act and you just be. And sometimes people have a really hard time with like, why aren't you explaining this to me? It's like, when you normally over-explain is kind of a nervous habit. So maybe, like for me anyway, I used to explain myself always, like over-explain because I was like worried about approval and things like that. And it's like, I've kind of quit doing that. So I think it's a me perception though. I don't think anybody really cares if I don't over-explain, because I was doing that for me, not them. So anyway, you'll stop doing that, or you'll stop constantly needing permission or validation, and self-trust will change relationship dynamics. So people can feel when your energy becomes less of this approval seeking. And then this doesn't always happen because people are bad. It's just sometimes change simply disrupts the familiarity. Like there's a lot of people that don't like change. So when you're constant, something stable in someone's life, and you change all of a sudden, that can really, really shake them. So this is why being misunderstood is sometimes part of alignment, especially during periods where the internal transformation is ahead of the external evidence, like we've talked about. So it's like maybe your life looks exactly the same, but you're just different. That's just confusing to people. So in being misunderstood, sometimes being part of alignment, I want to highlight an important nuance here because being misunderstood does not automatically mean you are aligned, but alignment often includes periods of misunderstanding. So don't get that crossed. Sometimes people are just going through it and they're being misunderstood. It doesn't mean they're always on like a path to alignment. There's just like the two are mutually exclusive things, being misunderstood and being in alignment. But alignment, as you go through the process of becoming more aligned, it will include these periods of misunderstanding. So just wanted to be clear about that up front. Especially during transition periods, internal change usually happens before external proof, which creates this tension. Again, you feel the shift internally. Other people evaluate visible reality. So the hardest phase is feeling internal certainty before the external evidence exists. That's like, if you are familiar with the principles of manifestation, it's like you have to believe you have it before you even have it. I think the Bible has a quote like that as well, of just like pray as though you already have the thing and then believe it, and then it will come. But we live in this kind of like society, I think, where it's instant gratitude, and that can be really tough to be patient and hold the faith that like the thing you're calling in will show up. So part of this is being able to hold that internal certainty before the external evidence shows up. So some examples would be feeling deeply certain about a direction before the results appear. Like, I know this business is going to take off. Like, you just know that, even though maybe you don't even have one person buying your product yet. that is hard to do. It's hard to hold the faith that it'll work out. But if you don't believe in it, no one else will. So you have to believe that it will, or else it can't come to you. Another one would be emotionally detaching from old goals before new clarity fully arrives. It's like, this goal isn't something I want anymore, but I don't have a new goal to replace it with. So sometimes you just have to wait for those downloads. And that's an uncomfortable stage to be in. I've definitely been in that a lot, where I'm like, I don't have motivation for the next thing, but I know this thing isn't working out anymore. Also, there's sometimes this knowing internally that you're changing while your external life still looks mostly the same, kind of ties into the other stuff we're talking about. And then having a vision for your future that sounds unrealistic to other people initially. And that phase can make you question yourself, and it can also make other people question you. Sometimes people can only validate transformations retroactively, not once when you're going through them, but once the results actually exist. And sometimes we don't give ourselves enough grace to do the same thing, me included. But once the external results exist and the external proof arrives, that's when again you'll get your validation. But during the middle phase, alignment can look irrational from the outside, especially when your values change and your priorities and your boundaries and your self-worth change too. Alignment often requires tolerating a temporary misunderstanding. So freedom starts when authenticity becomes more important than just managing perception. But I also think maturity is learning how to evolve without turning every changing relationship into a dramatic ending, because it doesn't have to be that way. Relationships, most of them can and will evolve. Some of them do end, but it doesn't, again, even if they do end, they don't have to be dramatic. So how do you outgrow an identity without burning bridges? Because some people think it's about, burn it all down and start again with relationships. No, it doesn't have to be like that. Growth does not require becoming cold. And not everyone from old chapters is toxic. Some people are, but a lot of people are not. They're just different. And some people simply belonged to another season of your life. And they were there for a reason, and now they're just maybe not part of the next season, and that's fine. And relationships naturally shift as identities shift. So you can still love people while realizing you no longer fully resonate the same way. Friendships become less emotionally aligned without a dramatic fallout. Realizing certain dynamics were built around old coping patterns. So you just maybe had a friend because they enabled certain behaviors in you that you're not going to carry forward into your next phase of life. That's fine. Let them go do what they're going to go do. Maybe you'll hang out with them less. That doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just, that's not for you anymore. Maybe another example is no longer needing to convince everyone that you're right and allowing people to misunderstand you temporarily without immediately defending yourself. That's one that I can tell I'm a lot different now, because I used to be so defensive about a lot of things. And like now I can actually just take feedback and be like, okay, like in my head, fully not agreeing with any of it and just being like, why do I have to be right about this? Who cares? So not every relationship that changes needs a villain, and maturity is allowing evolution without needing to villainize people. And also without abandoning yourself to maintain comfort. Compassion is not self-abandonment, and boundaries are not cruelty. And you do not need dramatic exits, these superiority narratives. Like, that's not aligning with your higher self. Your higher self would never want you to feel better than somebody else. No one's better than the next person. Even if you're more, quote, spiritually evolved than somebody, that doesn't mean you're better than them. It's just like, hope that they find the same path that you have too. That's all it has to be, is like, oh man, if you would just awaken and like kind of move towards this path towards your like higher alignment, you'd be so much better off. That's all it has to be. It's not that you're better than them because you've kind of awakened sooner. I'm hopeful everybody on this planet before I die will be awakened. I don't think that's probably possible, but that's what it should be. Not that you're better than people, because that pulls you into a lower frequency, and that's actually counterproductive. So you don't want to think that way. It's again, you don't need public performance of growth and to prove your evolution constantly, because real confidence actually usually becomes quieter, less reactive, and less performative, and more grounded. And alignment is not isolation either, it's honesty. And I think that leads into one of the biggest misconceptions about alignment in general. So what does alignment actually feel like? Social media often portrays alignment, I don't know, TikTok reels, things like that, false spirituality, I like to call it, because there's a lot of stuff out there, not all of it is accurate. But they're portraying it as like constant certainty or bliss or instant manifestation, which we already talked about is rarely the case, or confidence all the time. And in reality, it's often more nuanced. So alignment can feel calmer, more honest, less performative, less approval seeking, and more internally stable, and often less desperate energy, and less shape-shifting depending on who you're around, and less obsession with controlling perception, and more willingness to disappoint expectations, and more willingness to be seen accurately instead of liked universally. I think we all know those people that like to be liked by everybody no matter what, and they have a really hard time, being who they are when they know it's going to ruffle some feathers. And it's like, just be who you are, and like just accept that not everyone's going to like that. It's just the way it is. It takes all types of people to keep the world going round, and that's like nobody is here to be liked universally. So if you think that you are, question if you're really living your authentic life, right? Some examples here would be of living, in this alignment, and how like what this feels like would be making decisions with less need for reassurance, especially externally, not spiraling as intensely when people disagree with you, or feeling more emotionally regulated in your choices. Like, making a choice shouldn't feel like a dip or a spike. It should just feel like natural, like this is what it is, and flat. That's actually a good sign that you're making a choice from an aligned place. And no longer changing yourself constantly depending on the room you're in. Like we just talked about, the people that like to be liked universally, it's like these chameleon type people. It's fun for the people on the outside, like to feel like they really like somebody, and like, oh, this person's just like really easy to get along with for everybody. But like the person who is that way, it's just not. It's more than likely you're not authentically being yourself, and it's just not. Again, not everyone's gonna like you for who you are on the way of like they want to be around you, but that's fine. Like, who cares? There's like how many billions of people on this planet? You'll find your people. It's okay. Alignment often just feels quieter than people expect, and sometimes alignment initially destabilizes external life before it stabilizes it. Being misunderstood can hurt, definitely. I know. I'm not taking that away from you, but what hurts worse is constantly abandoning yourself and not, living the life that you came here to live. I promise you that hurts way worse than being misunderstood by people temporarily. A life not lived the way your soul authentically is here to do hurts way worse than being misunderstood temporarily, because people who love you will come around, and people who are meant to come into this next season, they won't. That's fine. Just know it's part of your higher plan, and that's okay. So just kind of wrapping all this up on this episode is that there are versions of ourselves that we outgrow that we can still appreciate, right? Like, you should be able to look back at every version of yourself and find some kind of glimmering light in what they did for you, or lessons that they caused you to learn. Even if you're not as proud of certain seasons, I promise you they all happen for a reason. And growth does not erase gratitude for previous seasons, is what I'm getting at. So sometimes alignment is just simply you're telling the truth more consistently, abandoning performance, tolerating visibility, and trusting yourself without the universal approval. And not everyone is going to understand your evolution in real time. And sometimes relationships really are seasonal. Not every relationship is meant to remain emotionally identical forever. Some people are part of specific chapters of your life, and some relationships evolve with you, and some will grow in different directions. And that does not automatically make anyone bad. It does not mean the relationship failed. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't erase what was real or meaningful about that connection during that season. Because things are changing all the time. Sometimes we just really need someone in our life for a certain time, and they need us at that same exact time, and we support ourselves, we support each other, and then we both move on to different things. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because you were friends when you were 15 doesn't mean you have to be friends now, you know? And I think part of maturity is learning how to let relationships evolve without needing to turn every ending into resentment or blame. I have plenty of people I've drifted apart from in my life that I think of fondly to this day. Like, you know, I'm never probably going to see that person or hang out with them again, but thank you for what you provided for me in a relationship way when you did. And I can only hope they think the same about me. But yeah, it's not that I resent people for not being in my life anymore. It's just like, okay, we're different now. We moved on. And you're not a bad person for changing either. And other people are not necessarily bad people for no longer fully aligning with who you're becoming. So in closing, the takeaway here is that more of a practical takeaway from this episode is really learning to become more aware of where you may still be performing instead of authentically living. Because if you're still performing in your life, that's not living in alignment. That's not living authentically. That's not living in your highest and best good. So really start to examine, like, okay, what behaviors and relationships do I have that are kind of formed around behaviors that I'm doing just from a space of trying to, I don't know, people please or whatever it is. And where could you be more authentically living? So ask yourself, what identities am I maintaining purely out of fear or judgment? Where am I shape-shifting for approval? What feels genuinely aligned versus familiar? And where am I abandoning myself to maintain comfort in relationships? And also recognizing that growth does not require becoming harsh, reactive, or spiritually superior. Again, I really can't underscore that enough, because I know there's a lot of toxicity out in the spiritual world of people putting themselves on a pedestal above others because they see themselves as more evolved or whatever. That's not real. If someone is making you feel like they are better than you because they know more about this spiritual stuff, or they're more evolved, they are not more evolved than you. They have a lot of growth to do themselves. So like this spiritual superiority thing, it's just part of the ego. I know that people wouldn't want to hear that, but that's true. It's just your ego needs to be controlled. And actually, I would say the number one tell of somebody that I know when they need to like kind of work on themselves more is like, I've heard this so much in the spiritual world. It's like, I have no ego. I have none. It's like, okay, the fact that you're even just saying that tells me that you have a little bit more work to do, because we all have ego on this planet. Like, we're all going to have ego. And it's part of living here. It's part of the challenges of living on Earth is the fact that we do have ego, and it never goes away. It's just as you become more spiritually evolved, you're going to be able to control it a little bit better. That's the difference. It's just controlled versus crazy, right? So you can evolve while still being compassionate, and you can outgrow identities without disrespecting the version of you that once needed them. And you can allow relationships to naturally evolve without turning every shift into a conflict. So things can change, and you don't have to view it as conflict. It's like, okay, observe it for what it is and let it, move on. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is simply allow yourself to change honestly, even if not everyone understands it immediately. Get the validation from yourself, not others. So not everyone will understand your evolution in real time, and that does not automatically make the evolution wrong. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this is helpful for those of you that are maybe navigating some relationship dynamic changes, or even just changes within you that you don't really know how to name because nothing looks different on the outside, but you're just feeling really different on the inside. It's just part of spiritual growth, and it really means that you're on the path to something higher and better for yourself. So anyway, if this conversation is something you want to talk to me about or anything, I have a contact form on my website, unveilyou.co. Send me, a message there anytime. That's the same. Unveilyou.co is also my Instagram handle if you want to send me a message or anything, but happy to talk about any of this. I am kind of like a living, breathing example of everything I was just talking through. This has been like the last year of my life. I'm not even fully on the other side of this yet. I'm just holding faith that I know like things are physically actually changing for me now. And it's like, oh wow, here we go. Here's where all the dominoes actually start to fall. So, and be built back up again. So anyway, love to talk about anything and everything here. So in the meantime, have a beautiful rest of your week, and thanks so much for listening. Bye.